On the evening of Sunday, December 18, 2022, thousands of people tuned into a YouTube live stream. The channel belonged to a man from Lisburn, Northern Ireland, a hobbyist content creator with around 37,000 subscribers, known for posting videos about collectible toys and video games. That evening, he appeared to be at home, playing Grand Theft Auto, Vice City, drinking alone in front of his camera. At the start of the broadcast, he mentioned a technical issue. He said he couldn't see the live chat. He wouldn't be able to interact with viewers in real time that evening. Some people took that at face value. The police service of Northern Ireland eventually didn't. Because while that video played on YouTube, appearing live, time-stamped to that Sunday evening, CCTV cameras 12 miles away, in the town of Lurgan, were recording something else entirely. A figure. Dark clothing. A rucksack on his back. Moving through residential streets toward a house on Silverwood Green. Deliberately obscuring his face from the cameras. At 8:52 p.m., he entered the estate. At 9:30 p.m., he left. The following night, a 999 call was made from outside the same address. The caller told the operator a woman was unresponsive. Cold. He said there was blood everywhere. He also said she was pregnant. Her name was Natalie McNally. She was 32 years old. She was 15 weeks pregnant. And she was already dead. The question that would take investigators more than a year to crack, and a jury just over 2 hours to decide, was how the man apparently sitting in his living room gaming on YouTube could simultaneously have been walking through the streets of Lurgan with a rucksack on his back. The answer would reveal a level of premeditation that even the lead prosecutor said she had never encountered before in her career. Natalie McNally was 32 years old. She lived in Lurgan, County Armagh, owned her own home on Silverwood Green, and worked in the local media industry. The portrait that would emerge from her murder trial, from the testimony of her family, from 500 pages of her WhatsApp messages shown to the jury, was consistent, intelligent, passionate, funny. She loved politics. She loved her dog, River. Those who knew her said she knew her own mind and wasn't afraid to use it. In August 2022, she matched with a man on the dating app Bumble. His name was Stephen McCullagh. He was 36, lived in Lisburn, about 12 miles away, also worked in local media, and ran a YouTube channel with around 37,000 subscribers where he posted content about collectible toys and gaming. The relationship moved quickly. 2 months after they matched, by October 2022, Natalie was pregnant with McCullagh's son. She told her family in November. The couple had plans, references in their messages to Natalie selling her home and moving in with McCullagh. They'd given the baby a pet name, Baby Squish. But investigators would eventually establish that something else was happening inside that relationship, something that the prosecution would argue created the motive for everything that followed. Evidence presented at trial indicated that in the months before her death, Natalie had been messaging several male friends, and that some of those conversations involved thoughts about ending the relationship with McCullagh. The court heard that he had access to her phone passcode. The prosecution's case was that he had used it, that he had read those messages. And here is where the evidence from a previous relationship becomes significant. A former girlfriend of McCullagh gave evidence at trial. She described how McCullagh had claimed to have stumbled across messages on her phone between her and another man. She also testified that McCullagh had secretly recorded a counseling session held at their home, a session about a stillbirth, without her knowledge or consent. The court did not formally establish that this pattern directly caused what happened to Natalie. But prosecutors argued it described something consistent, a man for whom access to the private communications of those closest to him was not a boundary he respected. At some point in December 2022, the exact timing is not established in the public record, Stephen McCullagh picked up a camera and began recording himself playing a video game. He played for 6 hours. He drank. He mentioned at the start that there was a technical issue with the live chat, that he wouldn't be able to see or respond to viewers that evening. Then he stopped the recording, saved the file, and waited. For days later, on the night of December 18th, that video began playing on his YouTube channel as if it were live, time-stamped, real-time, McCullagh apparently at home. He was not at home. He had put on a disguise, picked up a rucksack, and left his house. Sunday, December 18, 2022. The 2022 FIFA World Cup final was being played that afternoon, Argentina against France. Natalie McNally spent part of that day watching the match with her parents at their home in Craigavon. The game ended. She returned to her home on Silverwood Green in Lurgan sometime after 5 p.m. That is the last documented sighting of Natalie McNally alive. Meanwhile, 12 miles away in Lisburn, a 6-hour video was beginning to play on Stephen McCullagh's YouTube channel. To anyone watching, it looked like a live broadcast. There was a timestamp. There was McCullagh on screen, gaming, drinking. He'd explained at the start that there was a technical issue preventing him from seeing the live chat, which was why he wasn't responding to viewers. What no one watching could have known, what thousands of viewers that evening had no reason to suspect, was that the man on screen was not at home. The man on screen wasn't even filming. Because while that video played, CCTV cameras across Lurgan were picking up a figure making his way through the town towards Silverwood Green. The figure entered the estate at 8:52 p.m. 38 minutes later, at 9:30 p.m., he left. No emergency call was made that night. No alarm was raised. Natalie McNally's body would not be discovered for more than 24 hours. In the hours after leaving Silverwood Green on the night of December 18th, someone sent messages to Natalie McNally's phone. The messages were framed as expressions of concern. They read, according to the prosecution's account at trial, as if the sender was worried about her. Checking in. Wondering why she hadn't responded. The sender was Stephen McCullagh. He already knew there was no chance of a reply. The following evening, Monday, December 19th, McCullagh returned to Natalie's address on Silverwood Green. He called 999. In that call, he told the operator that a woman was unresponsive. That she was cold. That there was blood everywhere. She's pregnant, he told the operator. Officers from the police service of Northern Ireland arrived at around 10 p.m. They found Natalie McNally's body. A subsequent post-mortem examination established what had been done to her. 3 stab wounds to the neck. 5 lacerations to the head from multiple blows. Compression injuries to the neck. Bruising consistent with repeated punches. Facial fractures. Broken bones in the neck. At trial, the judge would describe what was done to Natalie McNally as brutal and frenzied. She was 15 weeks pregnant. And there was a significant detail that investigators noted immediately at the scene. No sign of forced entry. Natalie had let her killer in. Stephen McCullagh was arrested that same night, December 19, 2022. In police custody footage released by the PSNI after the trial's conclusion, McCullagh can be seen in the back of a police car as officers inform him he is under arrest on suspicion of murder. He appears dazed. He repeats the word murder in what appears to be a startled tone. Officers confiscate his phone. He was released the following day. And then something happened that would shape the entire first phase of the investigation. McCullagh had an alibi. On the night Natalie McNally was killed, his YouTube channel had broadcast a 6-hour gaming session. The video was timestamped to December 18th. It appeared to show him at home in Lisburn, playing Grand Theft Auto, Vice City, drinking alone in front of his camera. Lisburn is 12 miles from Lurgan. The window in which Natalie was killed appeared, from that broadcast, to have McCullagh firmly accounted for, at home, on camera, visible to thousands of people. The detail about the live chat being down? Plausible. Technical issues happen. By December 24th, within a week of Natalie's death, Publicly available reporting indicated that police were no longer treating McCullagh as a suspect. The alibi had held. And McCullagh knew it. Because what he did next is one of the most disturbing documented sequences in this case. He attended Natalie McNally's wake on Christmas Day, 2022. He spent 15 minutes alone with her remains. He spoke to her family about how he had discovered her body. Her family, who knew him as Natalie's partner, as the father of her unborn child, treated him as a man in grief. As one of their own. He attended a public vigil held in Natalie's memory. He told investigators and the McNally family that he believed Natalie's former boyfriend was responsible for her death. And on Boxing Day, 2022, he visited the McNally family home and left his phone behind. The phone subsequently recorded approximately 40 minutes of audio from inside the family home. When police later seized the device, they found that recording. Senior Investigating Officer Detective Chief Inspector Neil McGuinness would later tell the court that, in his assessment, McCullagh had left the phone deliberately. The purpose, he said, was surveillance, an attempt to determine whether the family suspected him. The grieving partner. The attentive boyfriend. The man who left his phone behind by accident. And somewhere, on a server, a 6-hour recording sat with a live timestamp attached to it, the digital version of Stephen McCullagh that had apparently never left the house. What the public didn't know during those weeks, what McCullagh may not have fully anticipated, was what the PSNI's cybercrime unit was quietly doing to his YouTube channel. The live stream had become the anchor of the entire alibi. If it was real, McCullagh could not have been in Lurgan. So investigators began pulling it apart, forensically. And they found something that changed everything. The 6-hour gaming broadcast had not been filmed on December 18th. It had been filmed on the Wednesday before the murder. For days earlier. And it had been scheduled, set up in advance, to play automatically on the Sunday evening, as if it were going out live. But investigators didn't stop there. A digital forensic analyst gave evidence at trial that there was extensive evidence of the pre-recorded nature of the stream, not simply an absence of proof that it was live, but positive forensic evidence, recoverable from McCullagh's equipment, that the video had been created and scheduled days before it appeared. Consider what that means. Thousands of people on December 18th watched McCullagh appear to play video games live. They saw timestamps. They heard him explain the technical issue with the chat. They had no reason to doubt any of it. What they were actually watching was a recording made 4 days earlier, a carefully constructed digital double, placed on screen to account for McCullagh's whereabouts while he was somewhere else entirely. And while that fabrication played out, while a pre-recorded man on a pre-recorded screen drank and gamed and waved at a chat window he'd never actually seen, the real Stephen McCullagh was boarding a bus from Lisburn to Lurgan wearing a disguise. By the time investigators had established that the live stream was pre-recorded, they returned to the CCTV footage with new purpose. What they assembled was a reconstruction of McCullagh's movements on the night of December 18th, a route that moved directly from Lisburn to Lurgan and back again, documented at multiple points by cameras McCullagh appeared to know were there, and was trying to work around. CCTV showed a figure, wearing dark clothing, carrying a rucksack, boarding a bus from Lisburn toward Lurgan. On that bus, the figure was wearing 2 layers of gloves, a yellow glove underneath a black glove. The double gloving, prosecutors argued, was consistent with an attempt to avoid leaving fingerprints or forensic traces on surfaces he touched. The figure was also observed making deliberate movements to avoid facing cameras directly. At 8:52 p.m., CCTV in Lurgan recorded this figure entering the Silverwood Green estate. At 9:30 p.m., the same figure left. After the murder, the reconstruction continued. A taxi driver, whose account was presented in court, was believed by investigators to have driven a man on the return leg of the journey from Lurgan back toward Lisburn. And at McCullagh's Woodland Gardens address in Lisburn, further CCTV captured the arrival home, a figure emerging from a taxi, and then throwing items over a hedge before entering the property. The jury was shown that footage. What was in the items thrown over the hedge is not identified in the publicly available record of the proceedings. That remains unclear. What is clear is what the full sequence of CCTV bus, estate entrance, estate exit, taxi, home, placed before the jury. A route. A timeline. A man who appeared to know exactly where the cameras were, and planned around them, while simultaneously making sure that a screen 12 miles away showed a version of himself that had never left the house. On January 31, 2023, 6 weeks after Natalie's death, the PSNI announced that the man originally arrested and released had been taken into custody again. Stephen McCullagh was arrested for the second time. This time, when detectives confronted him with what the cybercrime unit had found, he did not deny it. He produced a prepared statement. In that statement, McCullagh accepted that the YouTube video had been pre-recorded before the night of December 18. He offered an explanation. He had wanted to drink alcohol on the Sunday evening, but had promised Natalie he wouldn't touch drink while she was pregnant and unable to drink herself. So he had pre-recorded the stream to post online, to keep up his channel's content schedule, while actually having a drink at home, away from camera. The prosecution pointed out the problem with that account immediately. McCullagh drank throughout the pre-recorded video. It was right there on screen, for anyone to see. After providing his prepared statement, McCullagh answered questions from detectives with one consistent response: no comment. In released police interview footage, he can be seen sitting across from officers, repeatedly declining to engage. He had said what he'd prepared to say. He had nothing more to add. On February 2, 2023, Stephen McCullagh was charged at Lisburn Magistrates Court with the murder of Natalie McNally. He formally entered a not guilty plea in January 2024. He would remain on remand in HMP Maghaberry for more than 3 years before the trial began. On February 16 ND, 2026, a jury of 6 men and 6 women was sworn in at Belfast Crown Court before Mr. Justice Patrick Kinney. Natalie McNally's parents, Noel and Bernadette, and her brothers took their seats in the public gallery. They would sit there every day for 5 weeks. Watching the man who had stood at her wake, who had spent 15 minutes alone with her remains, take his seat at the defense table. The prosecution began where the whole case began, the stream. A police digital forensic analyst confirmed what investigators had found in January 2023, that the gaming broadcast was pre-recorded on December 14 and programmed to play 4 days later as if live. Not an absence of proof it was real. Positive evidence, from McCullagh's own equipment, of when the file was made and when it was scheduled to air. McCullagh had conceded the pre-recording in his prepared statement. The forensic evidence confirmed that scheduling it wasn't an accident. He had arranged it. While that evidence was read, Natalie's family sat in the gallery. The prosecution then moved through what they'd found in the messages, Natalie corresponding with male friends about ending things with McCullagh, her phone passcode accessible to him, and then, after her death, messages he had sent to her phone posing as a concerned partner. The CCTV reconstruction followed in sequence: the bus, the double-gloved hands, the entry at 8:52, the exit at 9:30, the taxi, the figure at his Lisburn address throwing items over a hedge. Then came the wake. Natalie's family gave evidence about Christmas Day 2022, McCullagh at her funeral home, alone with her remains, telling them how he had found her. And Boxing Day, the phone he left behind in their home, recording 40 minutes of audio from inside their living room. Investigators assessed it as deliberate surveillance. Natalie's parents were in the gallery for that evidence too. McCullagh did not give evidence. His barrister challenged the identification and pointed to 500 pages of WhatsApp messages in which, as the detective confirmed under cross-examination, There was not a single trace of an argument between McCullagh and Natalie. The defense argued that was inconsistent with a man building toward violence. The jury considered both accounts. They were back in just over 2 hours. On March 23, 2026, the jury returned to Belfast Crown Court. Unanimous verdict. Guilty of murder. When it was announced, cheers erupted from the public gallery. Outside the court, Natalie's brother Declan spoke. "Having you in our lives was the greatest joy we'll ever have," he said. He addressed his sister directly. "You would have been an amazing mother to baby Dean." He said violence against women and girls was the shame of our society, and he called for justice for all victims and their families. McCullagh had sat through the verdict without visible reaction. He had played, to the end, a version of himself that gave nothing away. On June 3, 2026, Justice Patrick Kinney delivered his sentencing remarks. Life imprisonment. Minimum tariff of 31 years before parole consideration. The judge assessed McCullagh's culpability as extremely high. He described the attack as brutal and frenzied. He said McCullagh had planned this murder in remorseless detail, worn a disguise, traveled to Natalie's home, launched the assault. He said McCullagh had attacked someone you professed to love in a frenzied assault which was characterized by its excessive and gratuitous violence. On the premeditation, the judge said McCullagh had shown a determination to cover his tracks. Then the judge said something that went beyond the individual case. The defendant did not just kill Natalie McNally. Her unborn child also died as a result of the murderous assault. The defendant was fully aware that Natalie was pregnant. He intended to kill her, and he knew that her baby, at such an early stage of the pregnancy, would have no chance of surviving the attack. He described murder as the most extreme form of domestic abuse, and said the killing of women by partners or former partners in Northern Ireland was a grave and recurring phenomenon in our society. McCullagh showed no emotion as the judge spoke. When the sentence was handed down, he nodded. Natalie's father, Noel McNally, spoke outside the court. "Today is not a celebration," he said. "Bernadette, my boys and myself are serving a life sentence since the murder. Here is what almost happened. Stephen McCullagh was arrested on December 19, 2022, the night Natalie's body was found. He had been at the 999 call. He was the former partner. He was the obvious person to speak to. He was arrested. He was questioned. He was released. And within days, the investigation appeared to have moved past him. The Livestream alibi had functioned exactly as designed. Thousands of real people had watched it. It carried a timestamp. It showed McCullagh at home, visibly present, 12 miles from where Natalie was killed. There was no obvious reason to disbelieve it, not without the specific forensic capability to examine the data underneath the broadcast and determine when it was actually recorded. That capability existed within the PSNI's cybercrime unit. And it was that unit, working quietly, during the weeks in which McCullagh was attending wakes and vigils and sitting in a grieving family's living room with a recording phone, that broke the alibi open. Not by finding a witness who saw him. Not by locating physical evidence at the scene. By opening a file on his computer and reading what the data said about when it was created. Senior Investigating Officer Detective Chief Inspector Neil McGuinness said after the sentencing that McCullagh had been very confident of avoiding justice, describing him as playing the role of the victim across his friendship group, across the McNally family and the public in Lurgan. The lead prosecutor, Catherine Kierans, said she had never before encountered the level of premeditation present in this case. What made the alibi sophisticated wasn't just the technology. Anyone with basic video editing knowledge can pre-record content and schedule it. What made it calculated was the context in which it was deployed, the awareness of which cameras to avoid, the double-gloved hands on the bus, the false messages of concern sent to a dead woman's phone, the decision to be present at the wake and vigil, the 40-minute surveillance recording made in the grief-stricken family home. Each element was a layer of insulation. Each element required a different strand of investigation to dismantle. CCTV analysis, digital forensics, phone data, taxi driver testimony, witness testimony from the family, character evidence from a previous partner. No single strand was enough. Together, they were. The prosecutor described the investigative outcome in those terms. What the jury heard was not one piece of evidence pointing to guilt. It was the convergence of multiple independent lines, all arriving at the same place. The jury heard all relevant evidence and returned a unanimous verdict in just over 2 hours. The verdict is not in question. But documentary rigor requires precision about what the public record does and does not establish. The precise moment McCullagh decided to kill Natalie McNally is not established. The exact sequence, when he accessed her messages, what he read, when he decided to pre-record the stream, whether those decisions were made in one moment or across days, is not comprehensively documented in available trial reporting. The stream was recorded 4 days before the murder. What preceded that recording, and in what order, remains unclear. The items thrown over the hedge at McCullagh's Lisburn home on the night of the murder, captured on CCTV shown to the jury, are not identified in the publicly available record of the proceedings. Whether they were recovered, and whether they featured in the prosecution's evidence, has not been publicly confirmed. The 40-minute audio recording made at the McNally home on Boxing Day, the court heard it was made, and that investigators assessed it as deliberate surveillance. What, if anything, it captured of investigative significance has not been publicly disclosed. The court did not formally establish a specific stated motive. The prosecution's case described a probable trigger, Natalie's messages about ending the relationship, McCullagh's apparent access to those messages, but this was not established with the same forensic precision as the digital alibi itself. These gaps are not noted to suggest any doubt about the conviction. They are noted because they exist, and because any account of this case that doesn't acknowledge them is filling in blanks that the public record has left open. At some point in the week of December 12, 2022, Stephen McCullagh sat in front of a camera and recorded himself playing a video game for 6 hours. He drank through the recording. He mentioned a technical issue that would explain why he couldn't interact with the chat. He behaved, on screen, exactly as he would if the broadcast were live. Then he saved the file, scheduled it, and waited for Sunday to come. On Sunday, December 18, 2022, he put on a disguise. He put a rucksack on his back. He pulled a pair of yellow gloves on and then covered them with black ones. He walked from his house in Lisburn to a bus stop. He boarded a bus to Lurgan. He made his way through a town he knew, past cameras he was trying to avoid, to a house on a residential estate. He knocked. Natalie let him in. 38 minutes later, he left. At 9:30 p.m., a figure carrying a rucksack walked away from Silverwood Green. And 12 miles away, on a screen, a pre-recorded man played video games and appeared to wave at a chat window he claimed he couldn't see. Thousands of people were watching. None of them knew. McCullagh apparently counted on that staying true. The PSNI Cyber Crime Unit opened a file on his computer and found that it didn't. On March 23, 2026, 12 jurors took just over 2 hours to reach a unanimous decision. Outside the court, Natalie's father said, "Today is not a celebration. Bernadette, my boys and myself are serving a life sentence since the murder." Natalie's brother addressed his sister in public. "Having you in our lives was the greatest joy we'll ever have. You would have been an amazing mother to baby Dean." Justice Kinney, in sentencing McCullagh to life with a minimum of 31 years, described the killing of women by partners and former partners as a grave and recurring phenomenon in Northern Ireland, not an aberration, but a pattern. That is the thing to sit with. McCullagh's alibi was more technically elaborate than most. The pre-recorded stream, The scheduling, the disguise, the gloves, the surveillance phone, it was constructed with what the judge called remorseless detail. But underneath all of it, what happened to Natalie McNally is something that has happened to women, in Northern Ireland and everywhere else, without a single camera, a single digital file, a single technical forensic challenge. A woman was in her home. A man she had been close to came to the door. She let him in. The technology was new. The crime was not. Natalie McNally was 32 years old. Her son Dean was never born.
Received justice.
Finally, Natalie, you were an inspirational person. Having you in our lives was the greatest joy we'll ever have. You would have been an amazing mother to baby Dean. We will love you forever, and we hope you can now rest easy.
I just want to thank everyone in the PSNI, the PPS, the barristers that worked so hard on the case. Thank you to the Victim Support Unit who have helped us through this awful journey.